Yesterday, I made this tweet asking for any questions that people have that they would like to ask me. And since that time, there have been a bunch of responses, and so I am going to answer those questions. I'm just going to go through all of them that I can fit in right now, and apparently Romeo's going to be in my lap while I'm doing it. And then I'll figure out how I want to break them up into a bunch of shorts or something like that. Maybe a big mailbag video, I don't know. Yes, I'm wearing a bathrobe because it's comfy, and also there are cats in the background. In the last game, although I didn't like the ranking system, I had to admit that the game evened out the ranges, so you rarely got double backline versus no backline. In this game, though, I'm seeing more unbalanced comps. Has something changed? It definitely happened in the previous game. The game does account for range, and I believe it accounts for it in the same way. There's a value assigned to each of the weapons, just like a number that is its range value. And it'll try to get the average of those two range values to be really close to each other. So that doesn't mean it's not going to put a combination of two different weapons together. But one thing that data miners have also found about the game is that it is going to experiment a little bit. They're trying to figure out, like, if we put two blasters in a team, is that going to screw things up? The answer is probably yes most of the time, but that's something they're trying to determine more experimentally than to take my opinion on the subject. And so it may well be that there are some comps that they're trying to actually experiment with, and that is where they're arriving at these comps from. What do you wish more people knew about when getting into competitive Splatoon? Also, any advice on how to solidify and use feedback after watching replays? I feel like I get great feedback from my teammates, but I can't seem to solidify it in my mind. I'll forget or revert. So the first question, really the answer to that is found in my long-form videos. Things like the What Am I Doing series, How to Get Out of Ranked series, the Finding Your Team video. Those are kind of the very big overarching ideas. If you've watched those videos through, you have most of my thoughts on any of those subjects, because I've tried to assemble all of those thoughts in one place at one time. Advice on how to solidify and use feedback after watching replays. So it's important when you practice, when you get on the game and start playing, to always have a question in mind, to always have something that is forcing you to think differently about the game that you're playing. Because if you just go in without thinking about changing anything, you're going to learn very slowly, because you're going to just practice the habits that you already have. And if those habits aren't perfect, then you're just going to practice the habits and not what you want to change. So there's got to be something that's triggering you to think differently periodically. The way that I like to do it is by having a list of goals, and every game I check down the list of my goals. 1 to 5, how did I do on this goal? 1 to 5, how did I do on this goal? And go down the list while I'm waiting for the next game to start. And that way I'm keeping my mind focused on the things that need to change, and I'm not forgetting about them. And eventually, you do those kinds of things enough, they will become habits. Do you have anything else you would want to add to your Finding Your Team video almost 2 years later? Not an awful lot. One thing that really stuck with me was I got asked a really good question by a team that I was interested in trying out for at one point. The question was, how do you tilt? And thinking about how different people tilt differently, and just understanding how everybody on your team tilts, and being able to have that honest conversation with each other, I think that would be a great conversation to have with your teammates. Just talk about, how do we tilt, and make morale, instead of being this thing that nobody talks about but everyone kind of sort of feels sometimes, just make it something that everybody talks about. Have that team therapy session if it needs to happen, and try to get everyone on the same page so that we're not stepping on each other's feet emotionally, and that we're going to be creating the best environment we can to play. I think that's cool. And also just the idea of like, while you're doing tryouts, make sure that like you're asking questions of them too. It's just like a job interview. You're trying to make sure that the two of you are a good fit. And what a lot of people do when they're going in for a job interview or when they're trying out for a team is they are looking for the other person to say yes without thinking, do I want to say yes to them? Because it's also dating advice. A lot of the time, people have spent so long looking and not finding that they're just like, at this point, I'll take anything. And you've got to not be in that, at this point, I'll take anything state ever. Because there are always more options, and you will eventually find something that's better if you keep looking for it. But if you just say, they said yes, therefore this is good, then that might lead you to ignore some issues that are arising and make it less likely that you have a good time there. So, why are the Dapples Nouveau just seen as just worse Tetras? Because of their kits, even though the weapon itself and their subs function way differently to each other and fill different roles. I think the main thing there is they're dualies that have Reef Slider. And I would agree that they are fundamentally quite different. Like, you cannot play the Dapples the way that you can play the Tetras. You will get splatted for trying to do that. They don't have the same range. And they don't have as many rolls. So they're going to hard commit to more fights. Like, I think it's a very shallow analysis of what those weapons do. Now, those weapons do have a major problem. So the just worse part is definitely true, I would say. If you want like a hyper-aggressive weapon, then the Tetras are the better choice because they have the range, they have the more dodge rolls, they can approach enemy ink more efficiently, their rolls go longer, they can fire while they're rolling. Lots of advantages there. But the Dapples, I think as a main weapon, are just very weak compared to the Tetras. And so the question is kind of like, okay, well, if you wanted a Reef Slider, why wouldn't you go for this? If you wanted an aggressive dualies, why wouldn't you go for this? And that's about where the thinking there kind of ended. So yes, Dapples, when played optimally, are definitely going to look different than that description. But I think the analysis that they're not meta, that they're not as strong as other options that you could be playing, is still probably accurate for top-level play. Obviously, play whatever you want. I'm not going to... if you come to me with a VOD review for Dapples Nouveau, I'm not just going to laugh you out the door. I'm going to try and help you understand that weapon. But I also think that if your only goal is to win and you're trying to be the absolute best player you possibly can, that planting your flag on Dapple dualies might not be the best tool for you. You might want to consider that there are other options that will play that same kind of role in a more impactful way. I have a friend of mine who's struggling with picking a main. He has at least 1 star on every weapon, but he's stuck in this loop of trying a weapon, getting a good match, taking a break, then getting destroyed and swapping off. No weapon can be mastered in just 1 star's worth of time. You need to give a weapon a very solid long try if you're going to get good at it. You don't need to like specialize only in that weapon. You can try some other stuff, but like it takes a long time to learn. And so if you're only giving it a certain amount of time, you're never going to actually be the strongest player you can be. So what I would say for them is, which weapon do you have the most fun playing? Start there. Like, figure out what role that weapon has, what mechanics of that weapon you like. Figure out, like, what it is that weapon does in a competitive environment, and be like, okay, I like weapons that do this and this. This is a combination of things that's fun for me. What is the meta version of that weapon? And that would be a really strong competitive main if that was what they were trying to go for. So, which roller is the best to start with? Also, any first-time tips with them? When someone asks what is a good starting weapon, a good beginner weapon, I'm like, I don't think that's the right question. I think the right question is, which weapon do you enjoy playing? And therefore, which weapon do you want to now get good with? If you enjoy playing the Bamboozler, I don't care if it's day one, pick up the Bamboozler and start being bad with it. The more mistakes you've made on something, the better you are at it. So just start making the mistakes now, even if it's not going to be the best one right out the gate. As for rollers, Flingza has always been the strongest one in Splatoon 3. Then, if you want a more aggressive weapon, because Flingza is literally a paint support, it is used for fighting at times where it has to fight, but a lot of the time it's just there to output missiles. If you're looking for an aggressive one, I highly recommend the Carbon Deco. I think it's really hard to beat right now. Bubble is falling a little bit out of favor, but the Splat Roller isn't bad either, and the Curling Bomb, it is one of the best uses of Curling Bomb in the game, even though I'm still not a big fan of Curling Bomb at all. Okay. Why doesn't QR apply sometimes, even when I don't kill someone? There is an article on Splatoon Wiki that goes into the flowchart for quick respawn pretty well, but it can also not apply if you are splatted by something like the running into the Rainmaker shield or falling off a ledge. So if it's not somebody else doing it. And another thing that can cause it, I believe, to be canceled or modified in some way is Respawn Punisher. So look for if your opponent was running that and see if that's what's causing what you're looking for. How does your weapon roll adapt to different situations in Clam Blitz? Does your weapon roll adapt to different situation in Clam Blitz? What you should be doing is what the team needs. So here are the things that the team needs to happen, from my perspective. There needs to be someone, usually two someones on a team, who are actively involved with pushing forward and taking space that the team did not previously control. There also needs to be someone who is charged with supporting those players with paint and being able to dive into a fight if they need to help out with that. But the other players on the team should be involved with locking that space down once it's taken. So, for example, a 52 gal is really, really good at taking more space than they had before, because they can put up a wall, they can move forward, and they can, have good aggressive strength from behind that wall. As for locking space down, the wall helps, but something like a Hydra is going to do a much better job of that, because the Hydra is going to be able to hit you from so much further away. So a combination of a 52 gal and a Hydra, where the 52 gal takes space and then the Hydra protects that player as they're in that space and holds that space from the enemy team, is, in my opinion, a stronger combination of things than two 52 gals or two Hydras, because they can fulfill both of those roles. One can take the space, and then the other one can make sure that the team keeps it, even after, say, the 52's wall has been shredded, and it has to back up a little bit more. So I think that it's kind of like a ratchet. One thing is the force that pushes you forward, and then the other is the force that locks that space in. So paint supports, anchors fill that sort of more supportive backline role, and then your frontline weapons play the frontline role where they're shoving forward. There are obviously some weapons that will play multiple roles really well, like a Splash-O-Matic is that frontline weapon until it gets Crab Tank, at which point it's locking that space in. And the fact that it can do both is insanely powerful, and one of the reasons that it's meta right now. So really all you need to do in Clam Blitz is push your point forward far enough on the objective line that you get to their basket, and then lock the basket down as if it's a splat zone. So being able to push forward and keep that space, those are the two things that you really need to kind of focus on. And what exactly it is that your weapon does to accomplish that, that's really what you're moving toward. So hopefully that helps. How do I aim good again? I tried picking the game up after a week or two and could not aim for the life of me. Main leader in scope. Yeah. That's just something that you'll break back into. I don't think you're gonna last too long as a bad aimer. You're gonna get back up there again if you just keep shaking the rust off. Taking breaks can be good for your mental, for giving you a fresh perspective on problems that you had been burning yourself out on running into over and over again before. But it's definitely going to cause your mechanics to weaken a little bit. And so that'll just take a little bit of time to catch back up to. You'll get there, though. It won't feel bad after a week or two. How would you improve weapons like Gootuber, Big Swig, and Undercover Umbrella? This kind of a question always has a lot of answers. Like, what does this weapon need is a question I get asked a lot. And there are so many different things you could do to improve any given weapon. Like, think about the best possible weapon, right? Let's say you press ZR on this weapon and all of your opponents are instantly splatted and the entire map is painted and you're teleported to where you play the objective. Like, you could do that to a weapon and that would certainly improve it, you know? And that's obviously not the way that anyone's ever going to think to improve them, but my point here is there's an infinite number of ways that you can improve any given weapon and make them more viable in competitive play. And the way that someone does that is really up to their aesthetic taste, what they're looking for in the video game, more than it is like, what is it specifically? What one missing puzzle piece is there? It's not one missing puzzle piece. It's like, how many different possible ways could you cut this puzzle up and rearrange it? So Gootuber, we can talk about their weaknesses. I think that would be a good place to start. Gootuber is a short-range charger, which is a problem because the biggest weaknesses of a charger are best offset by them having good range. The fact that they have a long time before they're able to fire a lethal shot, that gets beaten by short-range weapons. And so the advantage that the chargers typically have to offset that is that they're longer range weapons. But the Gootuber isn't as long a range of a weapon, and it doesn't have a very short charge time. It can't get that charge in a very mobile fashion. It really has to hide and then pop out and fire its shot, and that it's only going to get that one shot, and then it's going to have to hide again. Whereas something like a Nautilus, a Mini, a Heavy, with some of these Splatlings that can play in more of that midline position, they have multiple shots, and they can go after multiple targets when they have that charge ready. And they also are going to paint pretty darn well with those shots and be able to spread that around. So, Gootuber, it's got one of the best kits that it's ever going to have right now. I don't see too much more being added to it that is going to make that weapon strong. So it's going to need like main weapon buffs, like maybe give it a little more range or some unique gimmick that's better than what it currently has, because it's just kind of outclassed in that niche by other main weapons at least. I'm not sure about the kits exactly, but Big Swig, all it does right now is paint. If you're going to have a weapon that just paints, it needs a special that it's going to be able to use with that paint. Because the paint alone is not enough. We've seen that with weapons like the arrow spray. If all it does is paint, it is just not adding enough to the team. Because other weapons can paint almost as well, but also splat people, but also get a really good special that helps push the enemy team back. You need something like that to be able to maintain your team's positioning on the map. And Undercover Umbrella, move speed could help it. Improved shield strength could help it. More consistent damage or damage that comes out faster could help it. Again, lots of different ways, and any combination of those things that will make the weapon more balanced and be able to compete with other weapons in the game is, in my book, a good thing. I don't really care exactly how they get there. I just want the weapons to be better. Hey, so this video ended up being an hour and 36 minutes long. Hi there, Kat. I don't want to omit any of those questions. I only would have left any of them out for the purposes of moderation. So I want to get them all answered, but I'm going to put them up in chunks. I'm just going to, maybe a video of about this long, or we'll workshop it a little bit, figure out exactly how long I want to do them. But The nice thing about this kind of content is that I can make it all in one batch and have something ready for multiple days in a row. Because I'm trying to do daily uploads. That's what's best for the algorithm. But it lets me work on bigger stuff in the background while these videos are already scheduled out and I've already got them planned and ready to go. Because there are a bunch of big projects that have just been kind of sitting for a little while because of the strain of trying to put my time towards getting those daily uploads out. And I think that this is a nice kind of compromise measure to make sure I've got those daily uploads, but I'm also able to work on the bigger stuff and get the more heavily edited stuff that takes more than a day out the door a little bit quicker. So we'll see how this ends up doing. If these videos don't perform very well, if people don't like them, this will be the last of its kind, or this section of them, because I'll probably still put up all of it might be like 5 sections, I think, of about this length. I'll still upload all of those probably and get everyone's questions answered at the very least. But I think that this will be kind of a good way for me to make time to build that other stuff up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if you have any more questions, just follow my Twitter and look out for the next time I ask. So we'll see you on the next one.